Let's get together. Stop all this fussing and fighting. Let's love mother. You gotta help your mother, help your body. One destiny, everybody, y'all. One people, one nation, one destiny. Yeah, yeah.
Where your shipping address types itself. Where all your tabs go, everywhere you go. Where you can surf without getting fished. Switch to Chrome for a better browsing experience.
Hey, Guyanese, hey, won't be so stupid. I wonder, Guyanese like myself, yes. Why we so foolish? I'm not gonna tell you. Imagine we put the leaders there in the government and gone we back from them like we don't care how taxpayers' money spent. With all the corruption that taking place, we is the ones we blame. While them are thief. We just sit down like if we lame. But this God don't sleep. No, he don't sleep. By the time I done sing make I so, I know you're gonna agree with me that he don't sleep. Jehovah not sleep. One day the same bad seed that them sow, it's that they're going to reap. Under this party, politicians thieving at will. Under this party, them not care, they're doing it still. Under this party, all the big contracts are go to them friend. Under this party, them forgetting the longest rope of an end. But if we the people can come together and stand up for what is right, put aside we indifference and start unite. Politicians would know them damn place and work with honesty. then boom, Guyana would rise and have a vibrant economy.
So, this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
If you are looking to have your statutory declaration, affidavit of income, identity, damage or lost passport, lost license, tenancy agreement, agreement of settlement, power of attorney, last will and testament, and certification of documents, then you need to visit the Alistair Collins firm, located at the Killian Mall, 162 Lamaha Street in Georgetown, between Camp and Waterloo Street. Alistair Collins is a commissioner of oaths and a justice of the peace. Make certain you visit him or call for more information at 649-6410 or 685-6448 or 503-1451. And there's adequate parking available. Go down to the Alistair Collins firm and have all of your legal issues settled and brought to the fore. Alistair Collins firm. Contact them at Alistair Collins firm.
Mr. Watts, he is armed himself. Shots. Watch it. Tear gas. Live rounds. Also, I can see that.
That's the plan done! Come on, in your boxer, man. I like your hand put in your boxer, man, to do that.
But since my question there is no, you come on the East Coast.
You listen to me.
Right? No, you come on the East Coast.
You listen to me.
You gotta listen to me too, man.
I am listening to
Right? Now, I see you on the East Coast. The day when they get a protest of them, the next day, that's when you see one bigger heads come up to talk to my family. Right? And that's bad. If we didn't do a protest, you want to see nobody for justice. You see? I'm not holding back nothing. I'm not holding back nothing. I just need justice for my family. I get visitors all of a sudden. All of a sudden, you all have visitors. This is Joker. Who is that Joker? That piece of plum. They know who they did it to.
All right, hey, guess what? Good evening. My name is Mark Benchap, and as you know, this evening we promised that we will have with us the leader of the opposition. He's also the leader of the People's National Congress Reform, the Honorable Aubrey Compton Norton is with us this evening. We indicated to his producers, well, you know, he has his PR folks, that we will have the opposition leader with us just around 10 minutes after. So we are actually on time, but the opposition leader was on time. Started at 10 o'clock, he was here, 9 o'clock, waiting on us. So we just want to thank the opposition leader for his punctuality. So let's get down to today's business, as we thank you so much for sharing the link. Lots of questions for the leader of the opposition. The Honorable Aubrey Compton Norton is with us this evening. Let's get him right on board with us. Mr. Norton, good evening to you and welcome back to Straight Up.
Good evening, Mark. Good evening to your listening and viewing audience.
And we thank you so much. We know you have a busy schedule there in Guyana, working the ground and ensuring that you reach out to your constituency, the people, your supporters, and even those who don't support the People's National Congress reform or the coalition. So let's begin with, it has been quite a few months since you have been elected leader of the opposition and leader of the People's National Congress reform. Have you been able to settle in or settle down into that position or those positions as yet?
Well, I would say I came with experience. So it was a question of doing a clear assessment of where the party was at the time, and then putting in place the programs and mechanisms to ensure we prepare ourselves to become the next government in this country.
All right, in preparation for that, let's get down straight into business. We appreciate your time. One of the first questions I want to ask you today, the High Court actually ruled, in fact, it's a full court ruled that full court declines to lift suspension of opposition MPs. Matter remains before the High Court. These are frivolous charges leveled against members of parliament. They have been suspended without pay. How do you feel about this particular decision here today, sir?
Well, first of all, we have to go before the decision. The situation with the members of parliament is unfortunate because the law provides for anyone who is to be charged for anything to have the right to legal counsel, and they were refused the right to legal counsel. There is total violation of the rule of law. There is no right to hear the other side. And so the MPs went to court. As I understand it, they are waiting on the appeal court, but an attempt was made to get a ruling that would have granted an injunction and allow the MPs to return to Parliament. Unfortunately, that was not granted. We know that the judiciary is under a lot of pressure from this government. They're not allowed to operate as independent as they should. And so I think some members in the judiciary are seeking to read what the government is thinking and kind of complying in some regard. But we do believe in the final analysis, when the matter is heard, it will be a clear case of a violation of the rule of law, since the law provides for persons, including members of parliament, to have a fair hearing and to be represented by counsel. And those are the two critical issues. And I think the court, whenever it rules, will rule in favor of the members of parliament.
If you're now joining us, Mr. Aubrey Norton, leader of the opposition and also leader of the People's National Congress reform. Let's go to acting chancellor, and we also have acting Chief Justice. Months ago, the regime, Mr. Ali, indicated that they were ready to confirm these individuals. What has happened since then? You have indicated that, yes, you're willing to support the two for those two top judicial offices. What has happened since then?
Well, as leader of the opposition, the president needs agreement to appoint these two persons. I have indicated a while now that I agree that Janet Cummins could be confirmed as Chancellor and Roxanne George Wilshire could be confirmed as Chief Justice. The president's response was that, in his normal arrogant way, he wasn't ready and he will do it when he's ready. But I'm seeing some maneuvers by some people around them that are seeking to say that they can confirm the Chief Justice, but they're not prepared to do that with the Chancellor. Well, that wouldn't fly with us. If you're not confirming both of them, then you won't be able to get our consent. because the position is we're prepared to consent to the two of them who are acting to be confirmed. And that is where it is.
And have you guys been communicating on this particular matter, yourself and Mr. Ali?
No.
Because it needs the
No,
confirmation and the
I have
okay
not
by
been
you.
I have not been communicating with Mr. Ali. You know, we filed in the courts some cases to deal with the question of what meaningful consultation constitutes. I'm not prepared as leader of the opposition for Irfan Ali to just meet me, put names before me, and then say he would have consulted. If that is what is meaningful consultation, I won't be a part of it. For me, meaningful consultation has to mean far more than that. The clients have got to be qualified for the job. In cases where they should be non-political, they have to be non-political. And there are a number of criteria that I think need to be met before one can say one is meaningfully consulting. Don't forget that we changed from consultation in the 2001 reforms to meaningful consultation, because the argument was by the PP when they were in opposition was that people just come, put the names, and they're appointed. Now they want to do just that, and I'm not prepared to accept that and live with that.
All right, 16 minutes after 9 o'clock, opposition leader Aubrey Norton is with us this evening. Mr. Norton, concerning Irfan Ali and others within the PPP regime, they have said that in terms of any sort of meaningful consultation or conversations with the PPP regime, that the opposition, you now being the leader of the opposition and the leader of the PNCR, ought to recognize the regime as a legal regime. Is your position still the same, sir?
I have commented on that. The opposition cannot recognize or de-recognize the government. The law is clear. If you challenge an election, you go to election petition. If the government wants recognition, then they should facilitate the elections petition. And once the election petition established that they were involved in irregularities and fraud, then they would not be legitimized. If it goes in the other direction, then they will be legitimized. So it's not a question of whether the opposition leader will recognize them. Recognition at this stage is dependent on the outcome of the election petition. In election petition 88 and 99, there's information there that are placed before the court. The court will rule on them, and the ruling will determine whether the government is recognized or not. That is the reality. I don't know why the government is suggesting that we have to recognize them before any discussion will occur. And they flip-flop. While they said that, at one stage, they came to engage in what I would call a farce for consultation. So the ball is in their court. The election petition is before the courts. It's 2 years now. If they're serious about the rule of law and law and order, then they will allow the petition to be heard and let the chips fall where they may.
Absolutely. It seems as though that they are running from the elections petitions. Just to have our viewers know that on Wednesday, next Wednesday, the CCJ will rule whether to allow the appeal of the matter concerning elections. Petition 99 that was struck down by acting Chief Justice. So next Wednesday. How optimistic are you, sir, of a positive outcome of that particular matter next Wednesday?
I am optimistic, but worse things have happened. But I'm optimistic that if it is dealt with based on the substantive elements, then it would be upheld. I do not see why a court that is serious about democracy, rule of law, etc., would want to strike out a petition that puts the evidence before the court as to what happened in the last election. Mind you, a lot of the evidence is not hearsay. It is evidence that came from a recount that was demanded by the government. I believe the government is already in election campaign mode because I think they believe that they will lose the petition, and so they are preparing. So I am optimistic that the judges will rule that the petition should be heard.
All right, that decision, we are going to be carrying it live right here on 107.1 FM next Wednesday. Anil Nandalal recently said that APNU, and I quote, APNU AFC criticism of election commission of inquiry is disguised perpetrator objection. Your response to that, sir?
Anil Nandalal is paid to talk, and so he speaks. But if the law says an election petition is what should determine the outcome of the election or the situation vis-a-vis and determine whether it is legal or illegal, then there was no need for a commission of inquiry. We're not here arguing that the president doesn't have the authority. He does. The law gives him the power to set up a commission of inquiry into virtually anything. If he wants, he can set up a commission of inquiry into Sugate, where Jack Doe is alleged to have been involved in bribery and corruption. He could if he wants, but he chooses not to. In this case, you have a legal procedure for determining whether elections were properly conducted or not. And that is the petition. Let us not forget, throughout that process, they were arguing that it should go to petition. Now, suddenly you want a commission of inquiry. Note also that the recommendations of the COI will not be binding, as I understand it. But the outcome of the petition will be binding. And so I think they want to do it for propaganda terms. And if you look at the terms of reference, you will see it is not an attempt to investigate all aspects of the elections. More importantly, the president and the PPP are accused in this process, and therefore they should not be setting up any commission to look into themselves. And so I think the COI is a political maneuver aimed at giving the PPP PR advantages, while at the same time delaying the elections petition, which in fact is the way that you should go to determine what should happen in terms of the elections of 2020.
You know, Mr. Norton, you did you made a comment there. You preempted my next question. That here it is that the PPP they're party to this two elections petitions, and why would they now want to set up a commission of inquiry into the elections, knowing that they are defendants or they are parties to several elections petitions? Good point. Good point. And we already know the reason why they have set up this commission. It's just for optic reasons and just to make a fool of themselves. But I've noticed some of the questions in the audience there. One particular question, and I was going to ask you that. Will the opposition partake in the Elections Commission of Inquiry, sir?
At this stage, as far as I know, we will not be taking part in it. There's a possibility that there could be a change, but for now, we consider it to be farcical and not an attempt to get to the bottom of the process. We believe the focus should be on the elections petition, and we will continue to focus on the election petition.
You did say that there's a possibility that it can be a change of heart from the opposition. What would cause?
Well, I don't know about a change of heart. If there's a change of circumstance, then
such as
if today or tomorrow, let's say they decided we can revise the terms of reference, or rather than just, or have an independent group deal with the terms of reference rather than the PPP, and then there will be some scope for change. But as presently constituted and being implemented, I don't see us participating in this charade.
I know, but even any amount of participation would deem some sort of going against what the opposition stand for. I agree with you that the elections petitions ought to be the way forward, and the commission of inquiry is a farce. And so some people might be asking, why even participate? Why even if the circumstances
Well,
change? Why
I didn't say we'll participate. When you're in politics, you have to look at all the situations, and if new vistas open for positive things, you can utilize those openings. But if the situation doesn't change, then one sticks to one position. But as a politician, I don't believe one should say, I will never do this, I will do this, I wouldn't do this, because situations are dynamic and they change.
Got you. So, in a commission of inquiry, they have the powers. Those who are partaking in that, like the former chancellor of the judiciary and acting chancellor of the judiciary and so forth, they have that power, I believe, to subpoena, which means at some point in time, you guys will be subpoenaed.
Well, we will deal with that when the time comes. But even if they subpoena, we could just say to them that the matter is before the court and we ought not to speak on this occasion unless they decide they'll put all of us in jail. And they know who should be in jail now. It is not the opposition. It's the corrupt people in the People's Progressive Party. They are the ones that should be heading there.
All right. Just during the campaign for you as leadership, as leader of the People's National Congress, one of the things that you had on the agenda, and I believe it still is on the agenda, is for the removal of Claudette Singh, the chairperson of the Guyana Elections Commission. Sluggish process, you think?
I didn't get a question.
Sluggish process. I know you've called for the removal of Claudette Singh, the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission.
We maintain our position. We believe that the chairman of the Elections Commission should be impartial. We have already established that there's a tendency of Justice Claudette Singh to vote with the PPP regardless. That to me would have made her no longer suitable for the job, because as chairman of the Elections Commission, it is supposed to be an independent constitutional body, and it should not be following the diktats of the government. And in large measure, that is what is happening. And so we are not only campaigning for her to go, we are also campaigning for a clean voters list. Last week, Tuesday, we were in front of the Elections Commission. They didn't anticipate we will come, so they didn't put up the barriers. But if you drive Avenue of the Republic Main Street now, you will see that the government put up barriers so nobody can go in front of the Elections Commission. But we will continue our picketing exercise. We know that the government is a repressive government. We anticipated that once we start, they will bring out the police force. We know they have politicized the police force. We know that they have a commissioner who isn't qualified to be a commissioner, and therefore he has to do what they ask him to do. And so we are daily preparing for dealing with the eventualities. And we are concerned that while the police is focusing on us who have a democratic right to protest, the police force is declining in terms of competence. I saw that Mr. Paul Slow had to be correcting the commissioner and giving him classes. So they should be concerned that they are politicizing and destroying the Guyana police force rather than focusing on our protests. And I want to say this to people who listen in the Caribbean. And I said this when I was in Canada. A lot of times people treat Guyana as if it's a democratic society. But the only country I know in which you put up barriers so that the people can go in front of the White House. People can go wherever in certain countries to protest. In Guyana's case, you are greeted by barriers, and yet they want to talk about democracy. This government is a lawless, dictatorial, corrupt government that is divisive. And so we anticipate that this will be the behavior. We have begun the protest for a clean voters list and a new chairman of the Elections Commission, and that will continue.
All right, you guys can expect the continuance of the protest, and I'm not certain that the opposition would want to state what their strategies are with that regards. But the anti is being up right now. But do you guys? I mean, and I say you guys because you're operating as a coalition. Um, what's the position of the AFC as it pertains to protest to get to ensure that Claudette Singh goes? Are they supportive of that, sir?
In fairness to me, you need to ask the AFC that. But I know as a
You
coalition,
are the head. You are the leader of
as
the
a
opposition.
coalition, as a coalition, they have never opposed us being involved in picketing exercise, etc.
And do they support the position of having Justice Claudette Singh go, retired Justice Claudette Singh?
Well, they haven't said to me that they don't.
Got you. Now that you have a coalition partner, how often do you guys meet to discuss issues of national interest and your approach to dealing with these issues?
We have been meeting, but I left the country, and we haven't met since I returned. And I'm hoping that sometime in the new week we'll be able to meet and continue to pursue our agenda.
All right. What time? It's 31 minutes after 9 o'clock. We'll move on to some other issues. Mr. Norton, you did say recently that in terms of the bubble session and the slackness that we're seeing, that government taxpayers' money, and I think lots of people agree with you, that taxpayers' money should not be spent for wind down and bringing artists and so forth and so on. Let us hear from you, because we have a Christine Diane Jones actually said that you were correct on this one. State resources should not be used to fund not just Spicer, Kelly, or whoever it is. State resources. You're not against the artist. You are against basically state funds being used for that. Am I correct?
I have said before, and I repeat, I'm all for entertainment. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is that you have a culture ministry and what I perceive to be a useless culture minister. Culture ministry should be seeking to promote Guyanese culture. They should be seeking to develop programs to ensure Guyanese artists, Guyanese musicians, etc., are developed and afforded the opportunity to develop a Guyanese culture. I've said Rukatuks, which is a mixture of Kwekwe and Comfort, if properly harnessed and developed, can become a Guyanese brand. I said in the same presentation that people spoke about, as far as I know, the mixture of Indo and Soca began in Guyana as Afro-Indo beat. It became popularized in Trinidad as chutney. Now, my point is, we have diverse cultures, and we should be delving into those cultures to come up with music and other forms of entertainment to harness those skills and develop it. I made the point that a lot of foreigners are coming. If you feed them a diet of reggae, of soca, of everything foreign, they wouldn't get a Guyanese feel. That's the first point I made that the PPP and some seem to miss. The second point I made, I heard on Hits and Jams tonight, and I told one of the persons they should go and listen to what I said. I did not blame artists for damaging the moral fabric of the society. I made the point that government is obligated. I read what the Constitution says about young people, and I made the point that government is obligated to ensure that the Guyanese youth is not fed a diet of lawlessness, women abuse, etc. And so I proceeded to say that I think Mikey Spice is a good artist, but they put it as if I criticized him, which I didn't. They mentioned but two other artists that I never mentioned in the presentation. That is the only artist. And I think I said you had Bob Marley music as a kind of a symbol or an example of what should happen. But I am critical of the government promoting lawlessness. And then in response, one of them suggested that we brought Bojo Banton. I didn't criticize bringing of artists. I criticize the government's approach of feeding Guyanese young people a diet of lawlessness so that they wouldn't focus on the critical issues. And I criticize the fact that cricket is a unifying factor in Guyana, and the government has begun to use cricket as a partisan tool. People go to cricket and you're using it as an opportunity to advertise a man who barely escaped 19 fraud charges. And so what I criticize is the politicization of cricket. And that's where we stand on the issue.
All right, that's Mr. Aubrey Norton's position on the issue, because you did mention also, you seem to be preempting me this evening, that the coalition, under the coalition...
You know, Mark, and I must point out, I was talking about morality, and you put Kwame McCoy to respond. It means that you really believe immorality is the best thing.
That they chose Kwame McCoy, of course, of all persons, to respond. We're going to take a quick break just to give an example of what the leader of the opposition is talking about. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back with the leader of the opposition, Aubrey Compton Norton. All right, that's a little bit of Roy, I believe, who has been featured there, and the opposition leader is on to something. If private promoters want to bring in those sort of shows, you know, look, I like a Spice. I like some of those songs, not all, but I like it. And nobody's condemning those artists at all. But taxpayers' monies should not be spent for these sort of shows at all. And that is exactly what the leader of the opposition is saying. And all right-minded, all right-thinking Guyanese should be supporting that particular position. Let's move on now. Let's go to Linden. This little shack, this little house is the only thing after 1 year. Here's a contract, almost $200 million to build them Bamia School. Nothing, absolutely nothing thus far. Mr. Norton, your position, please.
Well, look, if you give contracts to people who are not equipped to be contractors, and even if you give it to people who are not equipped to be contractors and they are prepared to employ people who can do the job, then they will succeed. But if it is purely a political thing to put money in the hands of PPP operatives, then it's a totally different thing. But when you do that, you're playing with the welfare of our children. The children at Bamia need a school to be able to go to school and be properly accommodated. And if the money was approved in the budget, then the school should have been progressing. And it isn't. But you know, this government believes in lying. So when the REO come out as a work resume, he don't intend to show you where the work would have resumed. He intends to put that there, and people buy it because the PPP has a good propaganda machine. So it's just a propaganda ploy. They have no interest in the children at Bamia. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely no interest in all. 39 minutes after, 39 minutes after 9 o'clock. We are going to stay in Linden. We want to stay in Linden. We really do want to stay in Linden. Mr. Norton, I know you have on several occasions and rightfully so, refused to shake the hands of the installed president. The installed president, Irfan Ali. Lots of people support you on that. There are a few who might be talking about diplomacy and so forth, but they are in the minority. A lot of your supporters are in agreement with you. But what is your take on even members of parliament, one in particular, on several occasions have gone out to shake the hands of the installed president? What is your take on this, sir?
I have a simple position. I did not tell any member of parliament what to do on this issue. I, however, made it clear that our position is simple. If somebody is responsible for oppressing you, as Irfan Ali is responsible for, then the general position I have adumbrated in the party is that as leader of the party, my way of resenting and pointing out to the people that he is an oppressor, that he is corrupt, that he is divisive, that he is incompetent. My way of pointing that out as a form of protest is not to shake his hands. And I did say when I spoke before, until there are changes that suggest that he's prepared to work with all the people of Guyana, I will not shake his hands. It is easy for Irfan Ali to take photo ops with people and then use it to portray it as if he is with the people. He went into Buxton, pomposetted himself, then you give 28 people contracts to the tune of 56 million, which works out to about 2 million per person to build a bridge, knowing full well that they cannot make any money on that. The Demerara Harbor Bridge got a jam, and today Wanejil declared that they already spent 1 billion. 1 billion. You know, one of the things since we got oil, when it is things for the PPP and the supporters, it's always billions. But when it comes to opposition stronghold and people of all ethnic groups that support the APNU AFC, it is next to nothing. And so I have no intention of shaking his hands. I know from talking with people that the majority of people believe that they are discriminatory in nature and that it's the correct position to shun him until he changes his stink and dirty ways.
All right. Hopefully that members of parliament for the opposition would be consistent along those lines as it pertains to shaking the hand of an oppressor. You did mention about this $1 billion expended thus far to repair the Harbor Bridge. I did read in that report something about contractors. How vigorous are you guys in the opposition to ensure that these contracts handed out, they are being transparent? Who are the contractors, sir?
Well, first of all, I sense you know there are a lot of difficulties in terms of even getting the Commission of Information to give you information. What we are doing at this stage in a very structured way, and I know for sure it is happening among the PNC MPs, we are going through those estimates, etc., and will bring pressure to bear on them. First of all, for instance, no money was approved in the budget for Cricket Carnival. So they have to tell the world where to get the money from. And if one notes that they haven't accounted for Cricket World Cup since early 2000, you will understand that this will be another mechanism for corruption. But we are in the process right now of preparing our parliamentary agenda for the next year. And I think by the end of next week, we should be clear in our minds as to how we approach it, who does what, and when we do it.
Just in case I may have missed the point you made with the PNCR, discussing with PNCR parliamentarians, one would suspect that as a coalition, that there will be a unified approach on almost every issue. Why just CR parliamentarians and not all of the parliamentarians?
Because the modus operandi has been, at least since I am leader, I speak with the PNC, we get the PNC position, we then take the PNC position to the APNU, and then once we have an APNU position, we then take it to the AFC, and then we can arrive at an APNU AFC position. But I don't believe that as leader of the party, I must arbitrarily go to the APNU and then the AFC with positions, and they didn't come from the bosom of our party. So it's not a thing to separate. It's something to ensure that, first of all, the PNC is clear and on board, then the APNU, and then the APNU AFC. Because there are issues in which the APNU and the AFC don't see eye to eye on. Don't forget, we are a coalition. It's not one party. And therefore, we will have different interests, but we will manage those.
All right, let's get to one of the questions here. It's coming from Nigel London. His question is, if Mr. Norton's position is to reject Ali's gestures, handshake that is, all of the MPs should. If they do not, it is inevitably speaks to Norton's inability to inspire those whom he leads. Your response to that, please, sir.
Well, I don't understand his logic. If you say they don't because of my inability to inspire, is the word?
Yes, sir.
Well, people are inspired by different things. All MPs will have different interests and perspectives. What I have got to do is to engage them. Mind you, many of our political operatives are inexperienced, and therefore one doesn't know that it has anything to do with inspiration. But Mr. London is free to arrive at its own position. But let's assume that we have 21 MPs and one or two don't. Does it follow that it's a lack of inspiration? Well, I don't understand his logic. And the most I will say is free to have his opinion, but his opinion is void of logic.
All right, Mr. London, there goes your response. Thank you so much, Mr. London. Now let's move on to, in fact, we have been hearing recently about, and I don't necessarily agree with that, but we want to hear your opinion, not mine, that the PPP seem to be penetrating Linden. Your take, sir.
Penetrating is a loose word, but look, it is not the first time that the PPP is spending money in Region 10 and seeking to buy people. At every election, they succeed at buying some, and by the next election, they just push away that set because of their attitude to them. You had the case of Philip Bino. You had the case of Jafar. We could name many cases, but many of them will learn with time that the PPP's interest is in using them. What I have been doing, and I think is resonating, is pointing out the fact that the People's Progressive Party has no interest in Linden. And I have shown that they have no interest. We have shown to people that we left a hard athletics track that they were to complete, they never did. And we have shown to people that they said this call center will employ thousands of people and continue to lie when it doesn't have 100 people working there. It's on the verge of closing. We've shown to people that when it comes to allocation of resources, Region 10 gets little or nothing. And that what the PPP has been doing is identify people who have been coming into contact and sometimes conflict with the law. Some of them are ex-traffickers in person. Some fugitive from justice, all kinds of people who are not the best example. And they put some money in their pocket and they make it appear as if it is Linden that they are penetrating. I can tell you, I was in Linden when Irfan Ali went last Sunday morning to Linden, and they had more people coming from out of town in the entourage than people in Linden. Pull the pictures close on your screen and see the makeup of the. Today he was at Belladrum. You know what they did? They instructed all those who they are paying $40,000 a month to go or be fired. They took all the workers from overworked and forced them to go. So what they are doing is renting a crowd. We will know what the reality is at election time. I am saying to you, the PPP has resources. They are going regularly, but I don't know what penetration they are talking about. We will continue to do our work, and we know that at the end of the day, the people of Region 10 will be strong in support of the APNU AFC. I want to remind you that the PPP purportedly made inroads into Linden in 2006, and they got an extra seat, or they got a seat. Since then, we have been doing our work in Linden, and we want back that seat, and we will keep both seats.
Mr. Norton, Mr.
Norton,
let me just interject for one quick second, and I do apologize that in 2006, they didn't win that seat. That seat was contested in the courts. In fact, they stole.
Oh, yes, that is true. That is true. Yes, it was won by the AFC. Sorry, correct. Yes, it was won by the AFC and given to the PPP. I remember Samines took the seat. But the point I'm making, it is not new that they put all these resources, but the people in Linden will know that they closed down the Charles Rosen nursing institution and prevented Linden people from going to it while they bring in other regions to be there. Linden people will know that more than 1,000 nurse assistants were fired by the People's Progressive Party, and they are not going to support them. Linden people will know that there are a few people around who are getting some money, and yes, they will dance to the tune for now, but even them, you're not sure when election time comes if they will vote PPP. So all I would say to you here, our focus has to be doing on the political work, strengthening Region 10, putting more party groups, etc. in Region 10, do our work and prepare to trounce the PPP in Linden.
And absolutely stay away from those leaders out there in Linden, Region 10, because Region 10 is not just Linden, Kokwani, Ituni, and other places. To stay away from shaking hands of the oppressors. Let me just in case this person, because this is the third or fourth time this person is asking the same question, and I know you've answered it, but just for the benefit of Sean, Punta, and others who may not have gotten your response, the question is Norton, I assume Mr. Norton, recognized the PPP as a democratic government?
The PPP has returned to power in more dictatorial fashion than ever. First of all, the law provides for subvention to all NDCs. You choose the ones you want to give, the ones controlled by the PPP, and you don't give them the others. That is not democracy. The court would rule and the PPP would violate the ruling. That is not democracy. Democracy is where the people are involved in decision making and the government lives by the rule of law. You cannot be as corrupt as the PPP is and be democratic. How democratic it is for a vice president to be accused of corruption and bribery and he is not made to leave office. You live in the United States. In the United States, he would have had to go. In England, he would have had to go. In any democratic society, he would have had to go. But he is allowed to operate as if nothing has happened. So there is no consideration of the PPP as being a democratic society. The PPP is a dictatorial group that is corrupt and they practice racism. And daily we are providing the evidence of the racism of the People's Progressive Party. I don't know that you could be both democratic and racist at the same time. And so, for me, the PPP is not a democratic government. And we have not yet touched the fact that they are in power by questionable votes, by fraudulent vote. We just here talking about the attitude and approach to governance. That alone disqualifies them from being considered democratic.
Mr. Norton, I know we are approaching the 10 o'clock hour, but I know with all of our listeners around Guyana and around the world, they want to hear some more from you. So please grant us a few extra minutes. You did say that the allegations of corruption, serious allegations of corruption leveled against Barra Jack Dale. Some folks may argue that the opposition is not doing enough to ensure that this guy is pressured for an investigation. Would you agree with that or not, sir?
Well, if they say to me what they mean by we not doing enough, then I could answer the question. We have been highlighting it. In many of our protests, we have been commenting on it. We have brought it to the international community. But I think what people aren't recognizing is that birds of feather flock together. And in the normal course of democratic activity, the PPP will not act to get rid of Jack Dale. It has to be done by a combination of international pressure, political pressure at home. That's the bottom line.
All right, let's get to this here now. Lots of people have been branding this installed PPP regime as apartheid. So Guyana is now a semi-apartheid state. What is your take on that term, apartheid, right now?
One has to, if you use the word apartheid, they will run to say, no, there is not separateness, and one ethnic group isn't living here and another one isn't living there. The bottom line is apartheid is a racist philosophy. Apartheid is a divisive philosophy. And the philosophy that underpins apartheid is racism. And that is the practice of the People's Progressive Party. So people might be justified in calling it apartheid from the philosophical standpoint, though there is not the separateness that occurred in South Africa. If one takes it literally, then one might not be able to call it apartheid. But if one takes it from the practice of the government and the similarities with what has happened in Southern Africa, then it is justifiable.
All right, let's move on. Recently, Jack Dale, back with Jack Dale again, said that all of it, meaning Guyana, belong to all of us. But not so long ago, it is the same Jack Dale who says that there should be some negotiating a settlement with Venezuela that would see both countries sharing Guyana's natural resources, sir. Your take on this sort of flip-flopping hypocrisy from Jack Dale?
Well, first of all, if you see, it was October 2015, he was in opposition. Now, they lost government May 2015. Whether we're in opposition or government, we have always maintained that all this land is Guyana's own. What it points out is the opportunism of Barra Jack Dale. He has no principle. And because he has no principle, it is difficult for him not to flip-flop on principled issues. And that's all that happened there. Barajak, though, will never be somebody whose word you can trust. We are committed to Guyana, regardless of the government in power. We have always said all the land belongs to us, and that the 1899 arbitral award settled the dispute finally. And therefore, our position remains the same, but we understand Barajak Deo, and we don't expect much better.
All right, as we look towards the time here, there's a Prince Haduri. Says here, Ipadaji situation with the PPP. This person wants me to ask the question in terms of the subvention and the vindictiveness of the PPP regime, racism of the PPP regime towards Ipadaji.
Well, the party took a position, not in the last press conference, the one before, saying that the government is racist and that what they're seeking to do is remove every economic pillar from under the Afro-Guyanese feet. We've seen it with the Public Service Credit Union. We saw it with the Vajalstra Melanie Co-op, where they took away the lands from the co-op and distribute housing lots. We have seen them only recently moving the legitimate people in the Vajalstra Co-op and putting their own people, and they have a political prostitute, for the want of a better word, as the person responsible for cooperatives, and he is well willing to do the PPP bidding and dispossess many Afro-Guyanese who are in co-op societies. And so I'm not surprised by the behavior. I've noted that they say they are going to court, and I think they should. We will support them. But you know, when this whole thing about the International Decade for People of African Descent started, the PNC did not participate. However, a number of us in our individual capacities went and participated. I was one of them among them. And we prepare a comprehensive report on what needs to be done to help the African Guyanese community during that decade. We put out what should be done in fishery, what should be done in agriculture. And then the PPP extracted only bringing African artists to Guyana. I think they did bring Miriam Makeba. Nothing else for the decades. So as far as they're concerned, African Guyanese must just sport and they control the resources of the country. Now, then came the coalition government and resources were being put into it. And now they're seeking to take it away. We will continue to support Ipadaji and do all we can to help. We believe they should go to court. We believe it's in keeping with the law that they should get the subvention, but it underscores the racist nature of the PPP. They don't like when you call them racist, but you can only judge a government based on its action. We believe Guyana is for all Guyanese. Whether they like it or not, when we were in power, we governed in a way that all Guyanese benefited to the extent that we were criticized. We believe that a future APNU AFC government will develop programs that focuses on putting resources in the hands of our people to improve the quality of life. We have said that our measures will be targeted to the poor, not to particular ethnic groups and to particular sets of people. And mind you, I want to warn, when we talk about the PPP behavior, the resources do not get down to the average Indian, the average Amerindian. The discrimination that is perpetrated is aimed at enriching the PPP elite, friends, and family. We intend to change that and to ensure resources can go to our people. We have said that if you're serious about young people, you should be giving them the kind of education and training that will allow them to develop, and then provide them with grants and financial and other forms of assistance to put them into business. Look, the case of Linden. I know of cases where the PPP took people who are not contractors and give them resources to make them contractors. Now, we're saying that there is need for a program to facilitate the people in Region 10 being able to access contracts and execute contracts. And then they give these contracts to their friends and people close to them who supposedly have the money to do it. And you get what happened with Bamia School. So we intend to pursue a different kind of governance, a governance in which all our people will benefit. We have no problem with giving cash grants, but if you're giving cash grants, on the quarantine, you're giving 250,000 to $1 million. In the same region 6 at Baracara, you're giving 50,000. It's clear case of discrimination. And while they seek to give these crumbs to the ordinary man of all ethnic group, when it comes to the PPP, friends, elites, etc., they are doling out millions, and that has to change. We need proper programs for the development of our people. I mentioned what they did in law. Before 2015, they made it so difficult for poor people, including most of whom were African Guyanese, to get training in law. Of course, they're doing that because they want only people around them with legal competence. And they know that if they don't give law scholarships, a lot of bright people of all ethnic groups will be deprived of doing law. Right now, there are a number of people who come to me daily about help for law. And this is because of the discriminatory practice of the PPPC. And they're advertising and going on, but goal seems to be goalless. There is no structured approach in terms of who you're training, what you are training them for. Just saying access a scholarship on the goal doesn't make any sense. You have some 2 months program, some 6 months program. And when these people return, where are they going? So you are dealing with people who are not interested in the development of the people of Guyana. They're interested in their friends, their family, and themselves. And that is one of the biggest problems facing Guyana. We believed and were acting to ensure we have a law enforcement system that serves the people, and the police live up to its motto of service and protection. They have transformed the police force again into a corrupt entity in which those who have money can avoid the law, do people as they like. You just have to look to see what the Rogers boy did with that woman, and you would recognize that he feels he can do that because he knows the corrupt regime will protect him. And therefore, the poor woman will find herself in a position where she might not get justice. And so the system is fastly creating a police force that will protect them rather than serve and protect the people of Guyana. And you know of the many cases in which there's a particular case of a young man who went to prison, an Afro-Guyanese. But with time, I will deal with it. But it points out clearly the racism of the People's Progressive Party. And when you could set up for an African businessman to be charge for contempt, and then send him to prison wrongfully, then, we're heading in the wrong direction. The Ghana's police force is a political tool, and people will not be fooled. They are. And every day that they become more politicized, the less law abiding Guyana will become. And it will be our task to repair the damage they're doing to the Guyana police force. When you meet young policemen, they tell you there is no future in the Guyana police force. It is so corrupt, and that the leadership is so incompetent that it is heading nowhere fast.
All right. Looking at the time, Mr. Norton, thank you so much for those sentiments expressed as to the way forward on a coalition government once this installed regime is removed next elections. But we don't know when the next elections will be held. It could be next year. It could be by 2025. But knowing that and the date that the People's National Congress do have another internal party elections to elect leader, do you see yourself, one, being reelected, and two, being the presidential candidate for the coalition?
Go to the question again. I didn't get it.
There is still another elections within the PNC to elect another leader or re-elect you as the leader. Do you see yourself as being re-elected and eventually becoming the presidential candidate for the coalition?
I don't like preempting, but I think based on the job I'm doing in the PNC, we are resuscitating groups. Many new people are coming into the party, and they seem to be comfortable with my leadership. And it is the people who will be determined, and I think they will determine that. In fact, many people who are coming back to the party say to me they had given up hope. And with me becoming leader of the party, they believe there is a future. And so I will do everything to realize their objective. I think it is very, very necessary that we regain power, and all my actions will be geared towards doing that.
All right. Finally, we'll take this final question from the audience. Robert Gonzalez says here, there seemed to be a lack of drive from the opposition. No protests, no demands, and lack of overall fight. Your response to that, sir?
Well, first of all, we had a protest last week, Tuesday. We have, just for somebody to say there is no protests, I wouldn't agree with them. But there are people who say to you, oh, take to the streets, block up this, block up that. I don't know what that would solve. We are protesting, we continue to protest, but we are sensible, and we're not going to be led by people to believe that we need to just run down the road and do ignorance. We have structured protests. We continue to have structured protests. We protest in different forms. People seem to believe the only form of protest is madness in the streets. I don't agree with that. But as a party, we have been protesting, and you will see an increase in protest action.
We haven't seen much action
and expanding it to include civil society.
And all other parties involved, which means that you guys are in consultation with the unions?
Yes, we are speaking with unions.
Okay. Quickly, on this Dion Bascom situation, not having much traction, and the individuals who are supposed to be brought in for questioning seem to be running around Guyana comfortably. Are you comfortable with the lack of
I am not, but if you take it in the context of what happened with the Guyana police force, you will recognize that that is where it will head. Now, I'm not saying Bascom is right. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm not saying who was involved. I'm simply saying that if the Guyana police force was a force aimed at law enforcement, etc., then they would have dealt with this issue differently. All those who were culpable would have been brought before the courts, and we wouldn't be here where we are. But since the PPP has compromised the Guyana Police Force, since the Guyana Police Force leadership itself is corrupt, one cannot expect anything better from them.
The RSS report, Robeson Ben said that he's not going to release it. What is your party doing about that? Because we need to hear what the report is.
We have said that it should be released. We made our comments on this question of the release. We'll continue to bang away at it. In the final analysis, the government has it. We expect it to be released, and we will do what we can to make it a public document.
All right, quickly before we go, one last question.
You have a lot of one last.
I know you got to head out. One last question, and I left this so that it can be the last before your closing remarks, sir. We have seen the absence, and this has become rather questionable or suspicious. The long absence of the General Secretary, Ms. Geeta Chandan, and who happens to be the Shadow Minister of Home Affairs. What's the situation behind this here, sir? Will she return as General Secretary, or what is happening? Explain.
Well, first of all, I don't know that she was removed as General Secretary, so the question of return is not an issue. I made it clear that Mrs. Chandan asked for leave, we agreed, and she's on leave. I don't know about her ever being removed as General Secretary. She hasn't been.
No, I never said that she was removed. I said, will she return because she's on leave? We're not sure whether she will return.
She says she's on leave. I think at the right time she will engage me when she thinks she needs to, and we will make the decisions that we need to make.
You were once a General Secretary of the People's National Congress Reform. You have not gone on this length of leave at all. Do you find this length of leave unusual, sir?
A lot of what Mrs. Chandan said to me is personal, and I'm not prepared, in the interest of good relationship with her, to get into her personal affairs to explain the difference or why she is on leave. Mrs. Chandan is available, and you can ask her, but it is unfair to ask me to comment on matters that would have been discussed.
I'm not asking you to comment on personal matters at all concerning her, but I'm asking that you were once General Secretary of the People's National Congress. And the question is whether this is kind of like unusual.
As General Secretary of the People's National Congress, I never found myself in a situation where I had to request leave. And so it's a different situation altogether.
So how much do you think this is at a disadvantageous position for the party without a General Secretary for such a long time?
The party has a General Secretary.
On leave. That is not functioning.
And there are functions to be performed, and there's no evidence that they are not being performed.
Are you satisfied with her ability to do the work thus far as General Secretary?
Like I said, I'm not prepared to, having discussed with Mrs. Chandan, get into private matters in the public domain. It is not.
With all due respect, Mr. Norton, this is not a private matter. She is General Secretary of the party.
It is. You do not know why is it Mrs. Chandan is on leave. And like I said to you, this is a matter that was discussed between the two of us. I'm not at liberty to run around and say, this is it or this isn't it.
But I am not asking you, sir, with all due respect, I'm not asking you why she is on leave. I'm asking you whether thus far you're comfortable with her ability to be the General Secretary of the party. That's all.
While before she was on leave, I never questioned her ability.
Got you. Leader of the opposition and leader of the People's National Congress Reform, Mr. Aubrey Compton Norton. Mr. Norton, your closing remarks, please, addressing members of the audience. And of course, majority of them are supporters of the APNU PNC.
Just to say to all those who are listening that We are doing the work necessary to ensure we position ourselves to beat the People's Progressive Party. We know it's an uphill task. You're fighting a government that has oil money and doesn't account. We're catering for that. I also want to point out to the general public that our charges of racism against this government are real and true charges, and we will continue to expose them while at the same time promising our people that the government under us will treat all Guyanese as equal and having a place in this growing economy, and to shift Guyana away from this road that is leading to tension and disaster as led by the People's Progressive Party.
All right,
Good evening.
Sorry. Yeah, and I thank you so much for your time. I know your schedule is always busy. We hope to have you back here on 107.1 FM very soon. Don't be a stranger.
Feel free anytime.
Thank you so much, Mr. Norton. Appreciate it. All right, Leader of the Opposition, Aubrey Compton Norton, answering the questions. It's up to you. I know some of you might be saying there are other questions I should have been asking, but there are lots of questions. I try to include you guys in the audience as well. Some of you are walking away smiling. Some of you are walking away, wow. You know, it's the nature of politics. It's the nature of interviews and so forth. But we will have the Leader of the Opposition back sometime, hopefully soon. What time? It is 21 minutes after 10 o'clock. My name is Mark Benshaw. Yeah. Conrad August is saying that I went soft. I don't know what some of you guys expect, or what is a rough interview, or what is a soft interview. I don't know. Sometimes you can't please all Guyanese, right? And Conrad August, maybe next time I'll invite you to ask a couple of questions. But I noticed some people are asking to bring on Mr. London, but I definitely will have Apostle London sometime next week as my guest. But for now, hey, guess what? My name is Mark Benshaw. We've got to go. I'll be back next week, Monday, same place, same time, right here on 107.1 FM. But for now, thank you all. Have a great weekend and be safe in every aspect. Just continue to be safe. Until then, God bless you all.
So, this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
Oh, beautiful Guyana, oh my lovely native land, more dear to me than all the world, thy sea was sun-kissed sand.
Or down upon the borders, looking out upon the deep, the great Atlantic blown into a fury, or asleep at morn, at noon, or a bedfire in the crimson sunset glow.
I love thee. Oh, I love thee. Whoa.
Or down upon the borders, looking out upon the deep, the great Atlantic flowing in flow of fury. Aura sweet.
At morn, at noon, or better in the crimson sunset's glow.
I love thee.